Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to some exciting Warpforge news. That's why we are back. It's been a minute since we posted on the channel, but I am looking forward to doing more and more as we get different previews and different reinforcement drops, and we'll probably get some, potentially one of the new factions. I think it's within quarter 1, so maybe not this month, obviously, as it's wrapping up here, but we'll see about February or March. So there's definitely new stuff to get into. Thought I'd give a little update on my kind of in-game journey since I haven't been posting too much. And just kind of a quick side note, I had put out a community poll just about some different games to be covered on the channel. Warpforge, I think, is here to stay. I'm really enjoying the game, kind of no matter where I'm at with it. I've just really enjoyed it, and I think we've got a great content creator community, and that always feels really nice, and sort of adds a different layer to doing my own content creation. So we're going to be sticking with Warforge, but if you didn't catch it because it was very brief, there was a beta test for the new Dragon Ball Z, oh goodness, it's like Fusion World. I always mess up the name because it's kind of long. But I'm not going to lie, looked really intimidating, seemed really convoluted, and once I started to get it down, then I was playing it a lot this last weekend, I had a blast with it. So I might be putting that on the channel at some point. We'll see. I had tried Cards and Castles and some other games. Warpforge has been the main one that's held my attention, so I'm going to stick with that. But there's also new Magic coming out, and Ravnica, it's hard to shake it. It was my, I think, first set base. I technically started during Kamigawa, for you Magic people out there, but Ravnica has a huge place in my heart, and the new set is based in Ravnica, and it's got some of those themes. I'm actually going to a pre-release this weekend in person for the first time in God knows how long. So who knows? Maybe we'll throw some stuff up on there, but it's safe to say we're going to be putting out Warpforge content. We may have some other card games up here and there, but I appreciate anyone who's been sticking with me. I'm hoping to make it past that 500, up to that 500 mark for the channel. So if you like the content, please feel free to like and subscribe. Really appreciate it. So thanks for sticking with me, and if you're new, welcome. And so really quickly, we're in the legendary division at 3600, almost 3700 points. 3700 right now is about the cutoff for the top 50 for the leaderboard. So we've got 6 days left in the season. I'm hoping to crack the top 50. I will say, the player base is still relatively small, and so it just kind of makes the grind, especially at this point, right? Because you'll get 9 or 10 points for a bot game. I don't really like to play bot games. I'm not really trying to do that. Sure, you can get crystals. Yes, you'll get like 9 points, I guess. But I'd much rather play against real players, and whether you're losing or gaining points, it definitely, obviously, is more fun. So I am gunning for that, and I've been playing a lot of Uriel aggro. I think there's a ton of content on there, but let me know in the comments if you guys would like for me to do maybe a little bit more in-depth guide on that. But yeah, I've just been enjoying playing ranked. I've done a little bit of draft as well. And we'll talk about why draft is actually going to be pretty important coming up for the Tyranids reinforcement drop. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Been enjoying Uriel. I think he's really competitive. I have a pretty competitive Eldar deck, but I'm missing some key pieces. Same with my orcs, and I've been slowly working on chaos as well. So in the coming month, hopefully, I'll have a bit more deck diversity to show off to the channel. But you've got other content creators making some really great stuff with Warpforge who have access to those cards. So we're still free to play in it, and it just means that it's a little bit more of a grind. A little bit more of luck, when certain legendaries are in the shop and snatching those up. But we're making it work over here. So that's enough about me and all this stuff. We are here to talk about the update and really the reinforcement drop for the Tyranids. So let's just pop on over to that article real quick. So the Terror of Vandergast, I'm not going to read through everything, but some great graphics. Love the card graphics so far. And there's also a very cool video if you haven't checked it out. So the big news, really just to announce, is that on February 1st, and I'm recording the day before, and it should come out today, there are 10 new troops and or stratagems for the High Fleet Leviathan, which are the Tyranids. So they're going to be introducing a new Warlord and 9 other cards, and we're going to go over those today. which is really exciting. So EG was able to let the content creator program get this and be able to look it up. I had some issues downloading it, so sorry. I took some screenshots from other places and just sort of put it together. But hopefully the quality will still be pretty good. So I did want to go over a couple important points, right? How to collect the new cards. So there's going to be bundles and stuff. Obviously, for the free-to-play players, this is maybe not for you. I'm also free to play, so I may not be doing that as well. Um, but just important note: High Fleet Leviathan and all armies booster packs will have a chance to yield reinforcement drops, right? So that's something. All you'll be able to pick those up through um, draft or I guess your weekly chest as well. And then there's High Fleet Leviathan wild cards can be exchanged for reinforcement drop Terra Vandergast cards. So that's good to know, right? If you've been sort of holding on to your wild cards, had a few extra, you're going to be able to craft some of the new cards. And I'll definitely give my recommendations as I always do on like, is this worth crafting or not? I am not a huge Tyranids enthusiast, but I have ever since I got to see the way that some of the top Tyranid players have been playing. I do have a fairly competitive Tyranid deck, but I don't have the Forge to level 20, which is like incredibly, it's sort of like night and day. I think playing the deck when you don't have Digestion Pool for those of you who are familiar with that card. And I think the other point I wanted to go over, excuse my scrolling here, celebrate the release in draft mode. So this is an important note. Play with the new Leviathan card in draft mode. The Tyrannid Swarms will begin their draft, blah, blah, blah. To celebrate the new release, booster packs included in draft rewards have a chance to open Leviathan booster packs instead of the all army booster packs until. So I guess my understanding here is that instead of getting all army booster packs when you complete a draft with like a certain amount of wins, you'll have the option to instead get just a booster pack of the chance to be High Fleet Leviathan booster packs instead. Oh, so I guess so there's just a straight up chance that you'll get Tyrannid booster packs through draft over all army packs. So that's interesting. I actually thought I understood this and then I reread it. Also nice, we've got a promo code coming in the next day, so definitely keep your eyes out for that. So I like this. I like it. Draft feels like it's a way to grow your collection, and it's a way to get to know the game. So I think it's definitely centered on more of the new player experience, which is really important. Definitely very important to me because I want there to, as someone who does not want to have a huge barrier for entry into a card game, I think draft mode is well positioned for that. However, for the diehard card gamers and the people that know this game very well, including myself, I find less and less reason to draft, right? I either want to get on the ladder and grind, or maybe I'm doing stuff in the background, crafting, doing the forge, whatever else. So I'm still going to do drafts, but it takes quite a bit of time. Although I feel like there are a lot of people drafting almost all the time, so the matches like happen very quickly. I like that they're basically like, hey, if you jump into draft, for you players that have been around for a while and maybe have like most of the collection, you have a chance to just straight up get Tyrannid booster packs to try and hit some of these new cards versus all army packs, which maybe are not going to be as effective. So I like this approach. They're not going to do it for the whole time, but they're doing it for, I guess, roughly a week and a half. So yeah, don't miss out on that. I feel like that's an important detail that I didn't want to skip over. Also, achievements are live in the game already. They are Steam achievements, so you can track the achievements in the tab. Why am I telling you? Let me just show you. Under profile, yes, achievements. Boom. This last tab right here, right? Battle, collection, victories, and overall account. Sorry, I'm getting a little sick, so a little sniffly here. Yeah, so I think this just is like Steam achievements. I don't know. I mean, there is this. Maybe they're going to introduce a way to like use these. I think these used to be like part of the codex or like on Space Marine gear, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if we can use these. I got 265 of them. So I guess we'll find out. Not really sure what's going on with that, but we will check in once we know more. But achievements are live, and then the battle replay system I don't think is quite live yet. But I'm really looking forward to that, because I do think as I've played the game more and seen more content creators and like also their approach to the game, I do think that there are tons of different lines of play, and that not everything is so linear, which I kind of felt like in the beginning of the game, especially in the alpha. But obviously a lot has changed since the alpha. So yeah, just excited to see that update. But let's really get into the meat and potatoes of today, and hope the screenshots are you're able to see it. Most important thing is the card, not so much the description. But here is the new Warlord Terror of Vandergast. I mean, if you thought Tyranids were terrifying before, imagine them also with huge wings, which is even more terrifying. So this is the new Warlord. We will go over the town. I'm going to sort of skip past a few things and just go by rarity, because I figure that's a little easier to do. So let's dive in here. All right, one of the first commons that we're going to look at, Neuroloid, right? So it's 0 energy, which we don't see often. 1 attack, 0 ranged, 2 health, Synapse. And I think most people who play Tyranids will know that this, having Synapse basically at any point in the game, especially if you're playing Neurothrope or Swarmlord in particular, and I think Swarmlord has kind of proven itself to be the premier Tyranid Warlord for the most part. I think people are trying Neurothrope more, and I think Neurothrope does have a lot of potential. I actually really loved Neurothrope during the alpha. I found it to seem more consistent and more reliable and take advantage of some of the earlier like the 2 and 3 drop cards in Tyranids, whereas with Swarmlord you're much more focused on like 4, 5, 6. And it just felt clunky at times, but I do think Swarmlord is probably where you want to be. And Neuroloid, I think particularly for Swarmlord, is very, very good, right? Because any of the cards that affect unit, which basically says this applies to your Warlord, you really need a Synapse card to be able to trigger using those things, so it actually buffs your Warlord. Because Swarmlord really becomes its own, unit, so to say, when you have buffing health, which you do need because you're trading health quite often, or buffing attack and things of that like. So when you have a 0 energy Synapse enabler in Neuroloid, I think it probably deserves a spot in Swarmlord. Now, with Neurothrope, I think they've got a lot of enablers that are probably much more efficient, but for a deck like Swarmlord that the curve tends to be higher, Neuroloid seems like it... Sorry, my voice. Neuroloid seems like it could be a great enabler for the deck overall, right? When you have so many cards that can affect your Warlord, but you only have so many Synapse cards that can do that, and they're higher costed, Neuroloid seems like it could fit right in. It's hard to evaluate how good this is going to be when you don't have a ton of card advantage in Tyranids already, at least for decks that are not Turvagon. But I would just be on the lookout for this card. I feel like with Swarmlord it makes the most sense. With Neurothrope, I don't know that it really needs it. But this could be a very helpful enabler for that deck. Now, for the new Warlord, we're going to have to go over what their ability is, but we'll see if that also would be effective. My guess is that Synapse will also benefit the, what's it called? The Terror of Vardengast. It's like such a mouthful. So yeah, interesting card, interesting comment. Okay, we've got Neurogaunt, right? Another Synapse, Swarm, tied 4, so you can really chain these off in the late game. 2 health, obviously this is going to die. You're never going to play this on 2, right? Essentially, unless you need to. 2 attack, right? Super weak by itself, but if you're able to do it on 4, it's not the worst. On 6 and 8, again, you probably don't want to do that, but again, this is another cheap Synapse enabler. That's what I'm looking at here. So Also because I think as we'll see, there's more of a bent in this reinforcement pack to this sort of like go wider or sort of go tall, but it feels like a little bit more of a go wide strategy with the new Warlord ability, which we'll get into. Maybe cards like Neurogaunt will have a good place. I do think that any unit with Synapse on it is worth thinking about, and I think the cheaper the unit is with Synapse, potentially the better. Now, I see there's a caveat there because even the 3-drop that has really, really good stats, it's 3 attack, 3 ranged, and 4 health, is not really used in Swarmlord, right? Which is, like I said, is kind of the most common one you're going to see. I don't know. Neurogaunt might be actually a decent curve filler, right? You can play it on 2. It's relatively cheap. Then you can buff it. Right now, we've got the Epic card that's excellent. That is way better statted, right? And it costs 2. So you can play it on 2 or 4. You're almost always going to play it on 4. So there's already a card that really fills this 2-drop Synapse slot. But, I wouldn't be so surprised to see Neurogaunt in Tyrannid decks that are really trying to consistently enable Synapse, which is a very, very powerful ability, especially with Swarmlord. Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see. It's very exciting. So we're going to skip past. Sorry. Close your eyes. All right. This is the last common card here. Tyrannid Invasion. All right, what do we got here? So they're all falling from the sky, and boy, is that terrible for wherever this place is. Deploy 4 random 2-cost Leviathan troops. Typically, in this game, we have seen that the cards that are like just deploy X amount of troops for X amount of energy, typically they've been good. Now, there's the Rock Invasion, which is probably at the higher end. There's the Chaos one, which is sort of in the middle. There's been the Space Marines one that has been kind of nerfed and I would say is generally not very good. But for 6 energy, you're getting 4 random 2-cost Leviathan troops. Now, the problem with this is that a lot of the Leviathan troops can be just like really, really poorly statted, right? Because a lot of them are swarm and sort of they're built in to be like, oh, I'm going to play this and then build on this unit. So it's hard to say how good this could be. Because also, if you think about, I think a better equivalent is the 5 cost that gets 3 2 costs for Necrons. And I don't play a ton of Necrons, but I forget what that card is called. But that doesn't really see play. So it's hard to say if this is going to see play. Obviously, very different style decks, and maybe in a more aggressive version, like especially a card, decks or factions that have less card advantage. A card like this could actually be pretty good because it soaks up maybe an entire turn of your opponent clearing, right? And you've only spent 1 card to do that. Obviously, in terms of card advantage, this is pretty solid. All right, paying 1 card to get 4 troops is pretty decent. But if they're easily clearable pretty much every time, then you're kind of just you're passing your turn, right? And it's not really doing anything for your game plan. It is just hard to evaluate this. Obviously, this is going to synergize with the new Warlord. You know what? I've said it enough. Let's go to the actual ability. Alpha Warrior, right? So this is the ability for the new something Ghast Warlord. I'm going to keep forgetting. The Terror, we'll call him. Your Warlord gets flying and +1 melee attack for each friendly unit in play this turn. So if we're just going off this card, so on turn 8, you could minimum pump your Warlord for 5, right? Because you have 4 units plus the Warlord, so that's +5 and flying. Is that something that we want to be doing? Is that good enough? So definitely these cards are going towards this new Warlord, which is basically incentivizing you for going wide. However, with having a lot of swarm units, you can choose if you want to do that. And so there is kind of this modality of, okay, I'm going to try and enable my Warlord, or actually in this spot, it's better for me to enable my swarm unit, not worry so much about my Warlord, and just make a unit that's going to be really hard for my opponent to deal with, give it stealth, give it flank, whatever that is. Um, I think you're only going to play Tyranid Invasion with the new Warlord. I don't really. Maybe you could play it with Swarm Lord. That kind of struggles at some points with card advantage. It's hard to say exactly how this is going to shake out, um, but I think it's worth trying with the new Warlord at the very least. So I think that's our last comment. So let's pop back over, start going through the rares. Toxic Entanglement. I was very happy to see this card. As much as I know Tyranid's identity is just like killing things, it has always felt really imbalanced that they do not have any sort of removal. So I'm glad they added Toxic Entanglement, which is really cool art. I love the tank just getting absolutely messed up over here. Stun an enemy troop and give it vulnerable 5, right? So we know that vulnerable is very, very powerful. A lot of the stuff that, or at least that one spell that Necrons had that started at vulnerable 5 is now down to vulnerable 3. But that's because it gives all troops in play. So this is stunning something and making it vulnerable 5, right? So you stun it, give it vulnerable 5. It's basically a useless unit. It's going to die. Anything with even 1 or 2 power, right, is going to kill it because it's going to be 7 damage. And so what's nice about this, right, is you can stun something and basically ignore it for that turn and potentially the turn after when you know it's going to die, right? Especially if you have a Vanguard unit out and they just have to trade it, right? And it's on 4 energy, which I think passes the, the sort of the sniff test for decent removal, right? We've got Death from Above. We've got there's the unit in Tyranids, right, that has the Death Touch or whatever you would call it, Death Strike, where it deals the damage and kills something. It seems good. I mean, it's hard to say. Like you have to balance how many spells, especially with a Warlord like Swarmlord or Northrop, right? Because you basically want to have a Synapse unit on the board at all times to fully push your advantage. So you don't really want to have a bunch of spells just like stuck in your hand, or stratagems as they are in this game. So, but I do think Toxic Entanglement. I'd be really surprised if we're not playing 2 of this card in most Tyranid decks. It's just a very efficient removal spell, and I just never really got why Tyranids didn't have any access to that. So I think this is going to give them a little bit more of an angle that other decks have had that they have not. So, all right, that guy's kind of exciting to talk about. So let's go over some of the maybe more middling ones. So there's the Barb Gaunt, which is Swarm, Tide, Blast. Relatively decent stats. 3 health is not as good as the other 3 drops, certainly. So it's hard to say if Barb Gaunt will see play when they're just, I think, strictly better 3 drops to be playing. There's the same statted one, but it has 4 health and it gets +2 health when anything dies. And then there's also the guy that has, I think, 4 health as well, and is a 1/3, but also makes Spore. So it's like, I don't really know why you would be playing Barb Gaunt instead. However, of course, you might want to play it if you're trying to go wide, right, for the new Warlord. So maybe Barb Gaunt makes it into that deck. We'll see. Termagant Brood, same design, right? Swarm, Tide. Just not an exciting card, but I guess in a deck that just wants to just kind of like put out a bunch of troops, could be fine. I do genuinely not like these sorts of units that have very uneven stats. It just means that, there are most decks can take advantage of. Okay, for Necrons, for instance, right? They'll have the 5 power Frenzy flanker that comes in, or you have to deal with the Ultramarines either punching you for 4 or hitting you for 5 ranged off the Intercessor. So there's just a lot of ways to take advantage of a disparity in the attack or ranged. So not a huge fan of Termagant Brood, but if you just want essentially if you want cards that have Tide, I guess, then maybe you play this card. But I still think it's pretty unexciting. But I would say the most exciting rare is the Norn Emissary. Sick art, obviously, too. So it costs 15 energy, but does it? No, it does not. At first I was like, how did they do this? Then, of course, I read the card. So Armor 1, Blast 3, so it's just not really going to die. Obviously, insane high attack stats. Blast 3 is also like a nice kind of kicker. Lower the cost by 2 every time a friendly unit triggers Synapse, right? So every Synapse trigger lowers it by 2. Definitely going to borrow from BJ the Brave here. So you want to have Synapse trigger, right, it's like 4 times, right? So that would be 8 energy knocked off so that this costs 7. Could it be good as a curve topper if your deck is like almost all in on being able to trigger Synapse? This feels like Norn Emissary, just looking at it at face value, probably only sees play in Neurothrope, right? Because their stratagem, which is you can be used to trigger Synapse, cost 1. So it's the cheapest Synapse, basically, enabler in the game. And we got 2 cheap Synapse units in addition to the ones we already had. So that kind of benefits Neurothrope a little bit more if you were going to play Norn Emissary. Now, this card dies to unconditional removal, right? And that's always going to be the risk. But also, this thing is extremely potent if it does not die. Like, this does swing the game in your favor. And if you can reliably enable it, and I think really probably only with Neurothrope, maybe this is a decent curve topper, right? Even if you're able to play this for, let's say you trigger Synapse 5 times, right? So it costs 5, so you can play it, and also buff it with a Neurothrope ability or one of your cards as it comes into play, right? You would definitely want to give this stealth if you can afford to do it. So you could, on turn 7, if you triggered Synapse 5 times, is that possible? If you play the 0 cost turn 1, yeah, it is possible, I think. If you have a Synapse card each turn that are low costed. You could play this on turn 7, buff its health, and give it stealth. Right, so I don't know. I mean, Norn Emissary I would want to try out. I would not recommend it in anything other than Neurothrope as your Warlord, but kind of an exciting card to maybe play around with. All right, let's see what order we want to go. Let's do the epics. Did I miss one back here? No, I did not. All right, first epic, Psychophage. And I was thinking about this card a lot. So it's 5 energy, 6 health, 3/3. It's pretty low statted, but when it comes into play, it's going to get a melee and range for each damaged enemy. This damaged enemy, and we'll talk about the talent Feeding Frenzy as well. I don't know how easy this is to set up. In general, I would say it's not easy to set up. So my inclination is to say that this card is, and also at the 5 slot, you got to be really doing something that Tyranids need, because basically once you get into the 5-6 area, those are just some of the heavy hitters for the Tyranids in that curve slot. So what does Psychophage do if it lives, right? Am I missing it? Oh, shoot, I am missing it. Okay, sorry about that. I'll just tell you what it does. For whatever reason, I wasn't able to grab that one. So its talent, I believe, costs 1 for Feeding Frenzy. It's 1 or no, it's 2. It's 2 because it's like point blank. It deals 2 damage to something that's already been dealt damage. And if it dies, I think it's all units get +1 health. So obviously Feeding Frenzy is great, but typically when we see, I mean, just think about some of the Chaos cards that are 5 and have the talent, right? So you'll get it the following turn. They just don't do a whole lot, right? Because they don't have anything that affects the board when they come into play. And then they don't have a way to give themselves like some sort of evasion so they don't die. So I just don't really see Psychophage making it, even with the Feeding Frenzy ability being pretty decent. Maybe I'll be wrong, and maybe you'll be happy to stick this in the new Warlord, where you've got a bunch of stuff battling it out on the board, and you play Psychophage. I think if Psychophage comes in as a 5/5 for 6 health at 5, that would be pretty good. Like if you could reliably set that up, I think this card goes up in value. But if you're playing a 3/3 for 6 on 5, this card just doesn't matter. It is sort of how I feel. So we'll see how that goes. Sorry, I don't know. Maybe I wasn't able to get that other screen grab, unfortunately. Okay, do we have any? Yes, we have other epics. I think we've got at least one more. Yes, Bestial Rage. 8 energy. What is this thing doing? Double the melee attack of a friendly troop. Could it be good as a curve topper? Potentially. Um, I I don't love the design of this. I think there's something in Chaos that does something similar. It's like double all attack stats of a troop, and it doesn't see any play. Obviously, Tyranids are more focused on what their troops can do than Chaos, because Chaos do have some pretty strong stratagems. Um, I don't know. Very cool art. Love that. Ultramarine is definitely going to have a hard time into this. Um, yeah, I just wouldn't expect to see this, but maybe um, if there are changes to Tyranids where they can go later or like afford to play a card that needs a body on the board. I don't love these sorts of cards in this card game. I don't think that they're really going to work because again, it's like it's hard to get units to stick. And once they stick, you can snowball from there just by playing other units and having to battle more for board position anyway. I don't really think you need cards like Bistro Rage. And also the fact that it's only melee attack, right? Like maybe that is not the attack stat at the time that you can really buff, effectively. So I'm not super sold on Bistro Rage. Okay, I think we just have the legendaries left here now. So let's get into. Well, we went over terror, so actually, yeah, it's just the Neurotyrant. Okay, flying synapse, 6 energy, 8 health, big health pool, 2/6. So obviously a bit of a disparity, but also I think Tyranids do like to have some good ranged ability because they're usually lacking. Flying synapse and synapse on anything you definitely should be looking at. Whenever you play a non-ephemeral stratagem, create an ephemeral. So this is just really good card advantage. If this gets to stick around. The fact that this has Synapse, it's on 6, right? So there's Broodlord that is going to be on 6 as well. But you only get one copy of the legendary. So I imagine Neurotyrant is just going to see play in Swarmlord or Neurothrop because it's got Synapse, it's got a lot of health, and so it's just likely to stick around. It's also got flying, so you have a little bit of a different angle, right? You can punch something in the air. And you're getting card advantage from this. So I think Neurotyrant's probably the most easy to slot in card for most Tyranid decks, and I would imagine is probably one of the best cards to craft from the new cards, aside from if you want to play the Warlord. So there's not too much to say. I think Neurotyrant is obviously going to be a staple, most likely, for any deck that's just trying to take advantage of Synapse. So I think, sorry for my scrolling here, I think that's all I got for you folks today. Yeah, that's all of our guys. So the Terror of Vardengast. We're going to be firing this up tomorrow. Yeah, to all you Tyranids players, congrats. You guys got the first reinforcement drop. I can't wait to get a reinforcement drop for the Ultramarines and a few other people that have been playing for so long. Yeah, I mean, it is kind of nice that because Tyranids have not felt terribly meta. I think Swarmlord has come up a bit. To see that there will probably be more Tyranids like on the ladder, and I do think that's fun. That's not a matchup that I get to play against that often. So, yeah, so we've covered a ton. I'm sure the video is quite long enough. But thank you if you stuck with it. Definitely feel free to like and subscribe, and I'm hoping to bring you guys more stuff as soon as I can. So thanks for sticking with me, and I will catch you next time.